My wife, who's been secretly cheating on me with my boss, is now suing me for half our $600, $0 house, claiming I manipulated her into signing over all the property during her coma. Did I really lose everything to a con woman? I never thought I'd be the guy telling a story like this, but here I am. The worst part, it all started with a gut feeling, something I ignored for too long. One day, I found myself scrolling through my wife's phone, something I normally wouldn't do, but I was just curious. And what I saw hit me like a freight train. Texts from her boss, Mark, talking about meeting up late at night, about secrets and not letting anyone know, stuff that was way too intimate. I mean, I knew they were close, but I had no idea it was anything more than just work dinners or casual drinks. Turns out, she'd been sneaking around with him for months. Her name was Lisa. We'd been married for 8 years. She was the kind of woman who always dressed sharp, acted like she was the queen of the world, and had this bitchy attitude that she threw around like a badge of honor. When I first met her, I thought she was confident, maybe even a little intimidating. But over the years, I saw how she used that attitude to control everything. Her charm was sharp, her words even sharper. She'd throw fits over the smallest things, blame me for everything that went wrong, and somehow always manage to make me feel like I was the one messing up. Our house was worth about $600, $0, and we'd worked hard to get it. I'd built a decent career, and she was always talking about how she wanted a big, fancy life. But lately, I'd noticed she'd been acting weird, distant, distracted, secretive. She'd leave her phone in the bathroom when she showered or hide it when I walked into the room. She'd lie about where she was going, who she was seeing. I didn't want to believe it at first, but that night I found those texts, everything changed. I remember feeling sick to my stomach. My mind raced. How long had this been going on? Was I just blind? I confronted her the next morning, trying to keep it cool, but the anger was bubbling underneath. She sat there, brushing her hair, smirking like she knew she had me fooled. When I finally showed her the messages, her face didn't even flinch. Instead, she rolled her eyes and said, "Oh, you're overreacting. That's just work stuff. Mark's a friend, that's all." I was stunned. That just work stuff was her sneaking out late, meeting him at some sketchy hotel and exchanging explicit messages. And she had the nerve to act like I was crazy. I asked her outright if she was sleeping with him, and she just laughed, that fake, bitchy laugh she always used when she thought she had the upper hand. "You're so insecure, Jason. I'd never cheat on you. You're just paranoid," she said, but her eyes gave her away. There was this flicker of guilt, or maybe just fear, that she couldn't hide. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. All the trust I'd ever had in her evaporated in that moment. I couldn't believe I married someone who'd lie so effortlessly, who'd betray me so casually. The worst part, I'd been blind to all the signs. The late nights, the secret phone calls, her sudden interest in fixing the house, taking extra trips for work. She'd always been good at covering her tracks, but those texts, I saw everything I needed to see. I spent the next few days in a daze trying to process what I'd learned. I kept asking myself, how could she do this? How could she betray me with my boss? And more than that, what did this mean for us? She's always been the bitchy, manipulative type, but I never thought she'd cheat, especially not with someone I worked with. It felt like my entire life was crumbling. I wanted to confront her again, to demand answers, but I knew I had to be careful. I needed a plan. That's when I started digging. I hired a private investigator, something I'd never thought I'd do, and sure enough, he confirmed what I suspected. Lisa and Mark had been meeting up regularly, sometimes even when I was out of town for work. They'd been sneaking around for months, and it wasn't just about sex. They'd been planning some kind of financial manipulation, too. I found out Mark had been pushing her to sign papers, transfer assets, things I never knew about. That's when I realized this wasn't just an affair. It was a full-blown scheme to take everything I had. I felt betrayed in a way I can't even put into words. All those years, I worked my ass off to build a life and a future, and now I was staring at the possibility of losing it all. I'd always been the guy who believed in honesty, hard work, loyalty. And here I was, discovering that the woman I loved had been lying to my face the entire time. I was angry, hurt, and honestly, kind of scared. Because if she was willing to cheat and scheme behind my back, what else was she capable of? That's where I am now, trying to figure out what to do next. Do I fight her in court? Do I try to save what's left of my marriage? Or do I just cut my losses and start over? Honestly, I don't know. But one thing for sure, my life will never be the same. After I uncovered everything, I felt like I was walking around in a fog. My mind kept spinning with questions I couldn't answer. The betrayal cut deep, but what hurt even more was realizing how much I'd trusted her. Lisa always played the victim, said I was too jealous, too controlling, that she needed her independence. And here she was, sneaking around with my boss, Mark, behind my back. The thought of her lying in bed with him, made my stomach churn. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the moments I'd missed, the signs I ignored. The late nights she claimed were work, the strange calls, her sudden interest in new clothes and expensive dinners. I remembered how she'd always say I was paranoid or insecure, but now I saw how she'd manipulated me into doubting myself. She'd always been bitchy, throwing tantrums if she didn't get her way, but this was something else entirely. Next morning, I decided I needed to confront her again, face to face. I wanted to hear her lie to my face. When I got home from work, I found her in the kitchen, sipping coffee, looking as smug as ever. I dropped the bomb. I knew about the affair, about her scheming with Mark about the money. Her eyes widened for a second, then she scoffed. "Oh, please, you're losing it, Jason. You think I'd cheat on you with that loser? Mark's just a friend. You're so insecure, maybe you should get some help." I didn't buy it. I could see right through her fake innocence. She lied so effortlessly, I wondered if she'd ever told the truth about anything. I told her I had proof, that I knew she'd been involved in some kind of scam to take half the house, and that I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Her face twisted into this nasty smirk, like she was enjoying the chaos she was causing. "You think you can just threaten me and I'll roll over? You're not the only one who's clever, Jason. I've got my own plans and they're only just beginning." That was the moment I realized she was dangerous. She played me for years, acting like the innocent victim while secretly plotting her escape. I felt a mix of rage, sadness, and a kind of helplessness. I'd been blinded by love, by the idea of a perfect life. Now I saw her for what she really was, a manipulative, bitchy woman who'd do anything to get what she wanted, even if it meant destroying me in the process. I started digging into her finances, trying to understand how far she'd gone. That's when I discovered she'd already transferred a significant chunk of our savings into accounts I didn't know about. She'd been planning her escape, probably with Mark's help. The more I uncovered, the more I realized how deep this rabbit hole went. She lied, cheated, and schemed for months, maybe even years. And now she was throwing everything into this scheme to take my house, my money, and probably my life as I knew it. I felt sick thinking about the house, the place we'd built together, the memories we shared. It was worth $600, $0, and she was claiming I manipulated her into signing over her rights during her coma. A coma. She'd been in that hospital for 2 weeks after a minor surgery, and she was claiming I tricked her into signing papers while she was unconscious. It was outrageous. I knew she'd lied. She'd been conscious and alert during those times, but she'd also been heavily medicated, which she used as her get-out-of-jail-free card. She kept insisting I was a con man, that I'd forced her to sign documents she didn't understand. That's when I remembered how she'd been acting during her hospital stay, acting like she was the victim, crying when she was supposed to, but secretly texting Mark. I had a feeling she'd been planning this for a long time, setting me up to lose everything. I called the lawyer I'd hired, and I started to prepare for a legal fight. I knew I had to be smart. She was manipulative, and I couldn't trust her to tell the truth. I also hired a private investigator to follow her, to get proof of her scheming and her meetings with Mark. While all this was happening, Lisa kept up her act, playing the innocent victim. She'd cry, scream, accuse me of being a jealous psycho. She'd say I was trying to control her, that I'd manipulated her into signing anything. But I knew better. I had the evidence now, and I was determined to fight her for what was rightfully mine. The house, the savings, everything. I wasn't going to let her walk all over me. The emotional toll was brutal. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, feeling numb, wondering how I'd let it get this far. I'd loved her once, believed she was my partner, my everything. Now I saw her as a liar, a con woman who'd used me and was ready to take everything I had. The betrayal cut so deep I wondered if I'd ever trust again. I kept asking myself, how did I miss all the signs? Was I just blind? Or maybe I was too in love to see the truth. I still don't have all the answers, but I know I won't let her win. I've started building a case, gathering evidence, and preparing myself mentally for what's coming. I don't know how this will end, but I do know one thing. I deserve better than this. I deserve someone who respects me, who's honest, not a manipulative bitch like Lisa. And I won't stop fighting until I get what's mine back. I thought I'd seen the worst of it, but the next few days proved me wrong. After I confronted Lisa again, she doubled down on her lies. She sat there, eyes cold and calculated, telling me I was crazy for even suspecting her. She said I was just paranoid, that Mark was just a friend, that I was jealous and insecure. Like that was the reason. I was suspicious. She played her usual victim card, crying, acting hurt, trying to make me feel guilty for accusing her of something so disgusting. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I had enough proof, texts, bank statements, her secret meetings. I had hired a private investigator, and he'd confirmed what I suspected. Lisa and Mark had been sneaking around for months. They'd planned this whole thing, probably even before her hospital stay. I started to realize how much she'd been manipulating me, how she'd used her charm and bitchy attitude to keep me in line while secretly plotting her escape. That night, I sat alone in the living room, going through everything I'd uncovered. The house, the money, her lies, everything was piling up. I kept asking myself how I'd let it get so bad. How could I have been so blind? I'd always thought I was a good husband, hardworking, loyal. Turns out, I was just a fool for trusting her so blindly. Her constant bitchiness, her manipulative ways, they all masked a much darker side. She'd been scheming behind my back, probably even planning to leave me with nothing. I started to think about the house, our house. We worked so hard for it, and now she was claiming I manipulated her into signing over her rights during her coma. It was a total lie, but I knew she'd use that as her defense. She'd say I tricked her, that she was too weak to understand what she was signing. That's her usual tactic, play the victim, lie convincingly, and hope I'd back down. But I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I dug into the legal side of things. I found out she'd already transferred some of our savings into accounts I didn't even know about. She'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. It was clear she'd been setting herself up for an escape, and I was just now catching up. I called my lawyer and started to prepare for a fight. I also contacted a forensic accountant to trace the money trail. I needed concrete proof that she'd been scheming, that she'd lied about everything. Meanwhile, Lisa kept up her act. She'd cry about how terrible I was, how I was trying to control her, how she was the victim. She accused me of being jealous and paranoid, but I knew her game now. She was good at pretending to be innocent, but her actions betrayed her. I saw through her lies. Every fake tear, every fake apology was just another way to manipulate me into backing down. One day, I found out she'd been meeting with Mark at a hotel downtown. My investigator had followed her, and I got the photos. They were kissing, holding hands, looking like a couple in love. It was the proof I needed that this wasn't just about money or some minor affair. They were serious, planning their future together, leaving me behind. I felt a surge of anger and betrayal. How could she do this? How could she turn our life upside down for some guy who's probably just as manipulative as she is? The emotional toll was heavy. I'd wake up feeling sick, with my stomach twisted in knots. I'd go through all the memories, the good ones, the bad ones, and wonder how I'd missed all the warning signs. I'd always believed in honesty, loyalty, and sticking together through thick and thin. But she'd shattered that illusion. She'd lied to my face, betrayed everything we'd built. I'd been a fool for trusting her so blindly. I started to realize I had to take control of the situation. I couldn't let her keep lying, scheming, and trying to take everything I had. I knew I had the evidence, but I also knew I needed to be smart about how I played this. I couldn't just storm into court shouting accusations. I had to build a solid case, gather everything, texts, bank statements, witness statements, and prepare to fight for what was mine. That's when I decided to confront her one last time, not with anger but with cold, calculated determination. I sat her down, looked her in the eyes, and told her I knew everything, that I had proof of her lies, her affair, her plans to steal from me. She looked stunned for a second, then her bitchy smirk returned. "You're making a huge mistake, Jason," she said, voice dripping with false innocence. "You don't know what you're doing. You're going to regret this." I knew she was bluffing. I knew she'd been bluffing from the start. I was done playing her game. I was going to fight for my house, my money, my dignity. I'd been a fool for so long, but no more. I was done being the victim of her manipulations. I was going to stand my ground, no matter how much she lied or how much she tried to twist things around. I don't know what the future holds now. I just know that I'm not going down without a fight. I've learned the hard way that some people are just out for themselves, no matter how much they pretend to care. And if I want to keep what's mine, I have to be smart, patient, and relentless. Because this isn't just about money anymore. It's about my dignity, my sanity, and my future without her bullshit. The days that followed were a blur of legal meetings, late-night research, and trying to keep my head together. I spent hours poring over every document I could find, bank statements, emails, text messages, even her hospital records. I had to be meticulous because Lisa was a master at twisting facts, spinning stories, and hiding her true intentions. I knew she'd tried to manipulate the situation in court, claiming I forced her, that she was too weak or confused to understand what she was signing during her coma. That was her favorite line, playing the victim, crying crocodile tears, and hopping her bitchy, manipulative personality would win her sympathy. But I had the evidence to counter that. I spoke to her doctors and got records showing her mental state during her hospital stay. She was heavily medicated, yes, but she was conscious and alert enough to sign documents. And I had witnesses, my lawyer's team, the private investigator, friends who knew about her scheming. I was building a case that would prove she'd been lying all along, that she'd manipulated her way into signing over the house during her coma under false pretenses. Meanwhile, Lisa's attitude only got worse. She'd call me names, accuse me of being paranoid, say I was just jealous because she was more successful than me. She'd scream that I was trying to ruin her life, that I was a controlling asshole who didn't deserve her. But I saw through her tears and screams. I knew she was scared, scared that I'd find out everything, scared that she'd lose her plan, her house, her money. That's why she kept up the act, trying to make me doubt myself, trying to turn everyone against me. One day she stormed into my office furious, her bitchy face twisted with rage. She yelled about how I was ruining her life, how I was a terrible husband, how I'd manipulated her into signing everything away. She said she'd take me to court, that she'd fight me for the house, for every penny I had. I just looked at her, cold and steady, and told her I had all the proof I needed, that I'd see her in court, and I'd make sure she paid for her lies. That moment, I realized I was finally taking control of the situation. The most shocking thing happened when I found out she'd already contacted a divorce lawyer. She was planning her escape even before I started digging into her schemes. It was like she'd already made her mind up. She wanted the house, the money, and to leave me with nothing. I couldn't believe how cold and calculating she was. She lied, cheated, and schemed for months, all while pretending to be the loving wife. And now she was ready to throw me away just like that. I also learned that she'd been talking to Mark behind my back, plotting how to split the money and run. She told him she'd get the house, leave me with nothing, and start fresh with him. That's when it hit me how deep her betrayal went. This wasn't just a fling, it was a full-on conspiracy to steal everything from me. The thought of her with Mark, planning their new life together, made my blood boil. I felt betrayed, furious, and utterly powerless. But I knew I couldn't let her win. I had to stay strong, stay focused. I hired a forensic accountant to trace all her financial moves and uncovered even more shady transactions. She'd been draining accounts, transferring money to offshore accounts, and hiding assets. I didn't know what her endgame was, but I knew she was desperate. She lied so much, manipulated so many people, that I wondered how she slept at night. I started to prepare for the worst-case scenario: court battles, asset disputes, maybe even going to jail if she tried to accuse me of something I didn't do. But I also knew I had to be smart. I couldn't let her see how much she was rattling me. I had to keep my composure, gather more evidence, and stay one step ahead. I knew her bitchy personality. She was cunning, ruthless, and wouldn't hesitate to lie her way out of trouble. That night I sat alone in the dark, reflecting on everything. I thought about the house, the years we'd spent building a life together, and how she was ready to throw it all away for a guy like Mark. I'd always believed in loyalty and honesty, but she'd shattered that belief. I felt a strange mix of sadness and anger, sad that I'd loved her so much, angry that she'd used me, betrayed me, and now was trying to steal what was mine. I realized that I was at a crossroads. I could give up, let her take everything, or I could fight back with everything I had. Deep down, I knew I couldn't let her win, not after everything. I'd already lost so much trust, but I still had my integrity. I decided I'd do whatever it took to reclaim my house, my money, my dignity. I wasn't going to be the sucker who got played and left with nothing. I'd stand my ground in court, fight for what was rightfully mine, and make sure she paid for her lies. Because I learned the hard way that some people are just out for themselves. And if you don't fight for yourself, nobody will. The court date finally arrived, and I won't lie, it was one of the most stressful days of my life. Standing there, knowing that Lisa's entire future was on the line, made me feel like I was about to face off against a snake in its lair. She showed up dressed to impress, her bitchy smirk back in place as she threw glances at Mark, who was standing just behind her, smug and confident. I could see the way she was trying to act innocent, like she'd done nothing wrong, but I had all the evidence, texts, bank statements, witnesses, and I was ready. The courtroom was packed with people I didn't recognize, but I didn't care. This was about my life, my house, my future. My lawyer laid out the case, how Lisa had schemed, manipulated her way into signing over the house during her coma under false pretenses, how she'd been secretly working with Mark to steal everything from me. We brought in the forensic accountant who traced the offshore accounts and shady transactions, proving she'd been draining our savings for months. It was overwhelming, but I stayed focused. Lisa's response was as expected. She played the victim, crying, claiming I'd forced her, that I'd manipulated her into signing documents she didn't understand. She insisted she was too weak to make decisions during her hospital stay, that I'd tricked her. But the judge wasn't buying it. The evidence was solid and the witnesses testified to her scheming. Mark, surprisingly, didn't even try to deny the affair. Instead, he tried to deny any involvement in the property scheme. It didn't work. The judge saw right through the lies and manipulations. In the end, the court ruled in my favor. They declared that Lisa had lied, manipulated, and schemed to take the house and my savings. She was ordered to return the house, and the court invalidated any transfer she made during her coma. The judge also awarded me full control of the finances, and she was hit with a hefty fine for her fraudulent activities. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Finally, some justice after months of betrayal and chaos. But the aftermath wasn't just about winning in court. Lisa's bitchy attitude didn't disappear overnight. She became more aggressive, more manipulative, even threatening me with false accusations, trying to turn friends and family against me. I knew she'd never accept defeat easily. Mark, too, started to disappear, probably realizing he was next if he kept messing with me. I kept my distance, knowing that this wasn't over and that Lisa's revenge might come in different forms. The house was returned to me, and I was left with a strange mixture of satisfaction and emptiness. I'd fought for what was mine, but I'd lost so much in the process: trust, stability, the illusion of a perfect life. I'd been blindsided by her lies, her schemes, her bitchy manipulations. I realized that I'd been a fool to believe in her, to think she was the woman I married. She was a con woman, a manipulative bitch who'd done everything to tear me down and steal everything I cared about. Now I'm trying to rebuild. I've started therapy to deal with the emotional scars, and I'm slowly learning how to trust again, if that's even possible after all this. I've also become more cautious, more guarded. I know she's out there, still scheming, still trying to hurt me, but I also know I won't let her. I've learned that some people will do anything to get what they Want and that standing up for yourself is the only way to survive. Looking back, I wish I'd seen the signs sooner. I wish I'd trusted my instincts more, not let her bitchy attitude and manipulative ways blind me. But I also learned that no matter how deep the betrayal runs, you have to fight for yourself. Because if you don't, someone else will take everything you've worked for, and maybe even your sanity in the process. I don't know what's next, but I do know I'm done being the victim. I'm done trusting people blindly, and I'm finally ready to move forward even if it's with a scarred heart. If there's one thing I want anyone reading this to take away, it's this. Be careful who you trust and don't ignore the red flags. Some people are just out for themselves and they'll do anything, including lying, cheating, and scheming, to get what they want. Protect yourself, fight for what's yours, and never let anyone make you feel small. Because in the end, your integrity and your dignity are all you really have. After everything was over, I felt like I was walking around in a daze. The house was finally mine. Again, the legal battles had subsided, but the emotional scars lingered. I kept thinking about how Lisa had played me for so long, her bitchy attitude, the lies, the manipulations. She'd always acted like she was the victim, but in reality, she was just a con woman who'd do anything to get what she wanted. I'd been so blind, so trusting, and now I was left to pick up the pieces of a life she almost destroyed. The worst part is how much I still feel the sting of betrayal. Every time I walk into the house, I see her face in my mind, her fake tears, her bitchy smirk, the way she lied so effortlessly. I realized that the woman I loved was never really there. She was just a facade, a manipulative bitch hiding behind her charm. It's a hard truth to accept, but I know I have to move on. I can't let her define my life anymore. I've learned a lot from this experience. First, trust is fragile. Second, some people will do anything to get what they want, even if it means destroying others in the process. And third, you have to fight for yourself. Stand up, gather evidence, and never let anyone take advantage of your kindness or naivety. I've also come to understand that revenge isn't always about payback. Sometimes, it's about reclaiming your dignity and making sure the person who hurt you pays the price through their own actions. Now, I'm focusing on rebuilding my life. I've started therapy to deal with the emotional fallout, and I've been working on restoring my confidence. I've cut ties with most of my friends who were close to Lisa, realizing I need to surround myself with genuine people, people who won't manipulate or betray me. I've also decided to be more cautious with new relationships, not because I don't want to trust again, but because I want to be smarter about who I let into my life. Financially, I've made sure everything is in order. The house is secure, my savings are safe, and I've taken steps to prevent any future schemes. I learned the hard way that some people see money and power as their ticket to control and manipulation. I won't let that happen again. And I want to remind anyone reading this, trust your instincts. If something feels off, dig deeper. Don't ignore the signs, no matter how bitchy or charming someone seems. Looking back, I realize how much this ordeal has changed me. I'm more guarded now, but I also value honesty and loyalty more than ever. I won't tolerate betrayal again. I've learned that sometimes you have to lose everything to realize your worth. And even though the scars are fresh, I know I'll come out stronger on the other side. To anyone who's dealing with betrayal, manipulation, or just feeling lost after a heartbreak, know that you're not alone. It hurts and it's okay to feel broken for a while, but eventually you'll rebuild. You'll learn who truly cares and you'll realize your worth isn't defined by someone else's lies. Stand up for yourself, fight for what's rightfully yours, and never let anyone make you feel small. Because in the end, nobody can take away your dignity unless you let them. And as for me, I'll keep moving forward one step at a time. I'll rebuild what I've lost, learn from my mistakes, and trust myself more. Because I know now that I'm stronger than any bitchy, manipulative woman who tries to tear me down. I've faced my worst fears and come out on the other side, and that's something I'll never forget.